Hello everybody and welcome to today's video where I want to talk about network effects stocks. And I have this spreadsheet right here with 11 different stocks that I consider to have network effects and that interests me. I think it's going to be valuable to compare the different network effects and how that can affect these businesses and create staying power, as I have written in the thumbnail. The big advantage of network effect stocks is that they have a lot of staying power. And if you're not familiar with network effects, let me just give you a brief introduction in network effects and stocks and why I love them. So a network effect type company or stock is a company that owns a network that they typically manage, right? A marketplace, oftentimes a two-party marketplace. And every time a new user joins that marketplace or joins that network, the value of the network increases for everyone. So whenever a new user joins the network becomes more valuable for everybody on that network. That is the power of network effect stocks. They create these unsurmountable moats over a very long run because the technology becomes the standard and the standard has major staying power. So this is why when you have a network effect stocks, oftentimes it's a winner takes most. A winner takes most game is what it is. So let me give you a famous example of network effects. So the telephone network. Let's talk about the telephone network. Would the telephone have any value if it was just used in a few cities, say in North America? No, it would have no value. The reason why the telephone network still has tremendous value around the world, even though the technology is objectively very obsolete today, it's got this enormous value because everybody has a phone number. Doesn't matter if you're young, if you're old, doesn't matter of a country, technology advancement that you live in, everybody has that. Fax, believe it or not, fax is still used in business today, especially in administration. Fax has value because everyone is on it. Email, I could make a clear argument that it's obsolete today, right? If you compare it to, say, apps like Slack or even, well, I'm not going to say, but even Microsoft Teams, it's obsolete. Email is slowly getting obsolete. You know, that's why in popular culture, they say, oh, DM me, that, right, instead of email. Yet, everybody's going to keep using email for a very long time because everybody has an email. So it has tremendous network effect. And same for even the postal service, right? Every single country's posts is connected to each other. So you can send mail just about everywhere. That's a network. These networks are very, very, very valuable. Of course, the best example of a network is the English language, or any language for that matter. Think about a speaker of English. If you speak English, doesn't matter if it's your first or second language like me, if you speak English, whenever somebody else learns English, whenever there's a new user of the English network, whenever someone joins the network by learning English, English becomes more valuable for everybody who already speaks it. The value of English is because everybody speaks it. That's why it has value, and that's why over time, you know, over a very long run, what's going to be left of other languages? Are we going to end up in a world where there's only a dozen, maybe less than 5 major languages? And maybe in 500 years, is there going to be only English left? Maybe, right? That's the power of these networks. These networks are very powerful. Whenever someone else learns English, English becomes more valuable. And that's why I'll get to it in the companies, but say, I mean, you probably know which music app that is, but the value of a music app is based on how many singers decide to stream their music on that music app. And there is one leader in the audio streaming space that has just about everybody registered on it, right? YouTube is very likely to remain a leader in video apps because everybody's on it, right? That's what makes the power of these platforms. And so for Spotify, right, whenever a new artist joins Spotify and puts their music on Spotify, it makes Spotify stickier and more valuable for its users, and its users are less likely to quit, and they're more likely to say, okay, you raise the price. That's not a problem. I don't have a choice. That's where all of the music is. I have to be on Spotify. Let me show you counterexamples, like a different way to approach the network effects. Use a counterexample. So before I go on those two examples, let me tell you, would you learn a language that is spoken by very, very few people, right? Would you learn a language that is like only spoken in a village? And there's many countries where each villages have different languages. Would you learn that language that's only spoken in that village? Probably not. When you think about learning a foreign language, you probably think about learning English or learning one of the major foreign languages out there, right? Spanish, Chinese. But you probably don't think about learning some minor language of a minor part of, say, a minor state in, I don't know, say somewhere in Bangladesh or something, right? So the point I'm making is that, yeah, you wouldn't, right? And so counter examples again, it's like, for example, let's take dating sites, because I cover dating site on my spreadsheet here. I cover 2 dating sites. Would anybody register on a dating site that has no profiles, no matches? There's nobody on that dating site registered in your city. Would you register? It's the best dating site in the history of the world. The technology is amazing, but nobody's on it. Would you register? No, you would not, right? Would you shop on the best network for shopping, right? A marketplace. Would you shop on a marketplace if there were no products listed for sale on it? No, you would not. So these are the counter examples. That's why network effects are so powerful. That's why I love them very much. Now, let me get on to the stocks. So I'm going to group them like this. So these are, in the case of GigaCloud Tech and Xometry, these are my inexpensive, emergent network effects. So GigaCloud is emerging as an early day drop shipping for bulky items network effect. And so as more and more people join the platform of GigaCloud Tech, the more platforms becomes valuable for everybody already using it, for every supplier already on it. And so that's the key of a two-sided marketplace. You try to grow both the sellers and the buyers at the same time, right? I could have put on there, say, a Uber or a Lyft. You try to grow the number of drivers and the number of riders at the same time, right? Dating site, right? You try to grow the number of men and the number of women at the same time. If you don't do that, you're gonna run into trouble, right? These are these two-sided marketplaces. But nonetheless, once you establish that marketplace, you can have a moat. You have a head start. So let's talk about evaluation for those two. And of course, the one I find very compelling is GigaCloud Tech because of evaluation. Thank you, Mr. Short Seller, for I guess attacking GigaCloud Tech, because there's a lot of rumors that were spread online about this company, and so the company is very cheap, even though it's got very respectable VCs behind it. I will do a full analysis. I'm interested in this one at 0.09. It's a cheap stock, and it's got a network effect. Now, a stock that I've covered before on the channel, I never bought it. But like Xometry. So Xometry is a stock that puts into contact makers of 3D sellers of 3D printed parts, sellers of machined parts for industry, solder, welded parts, all of that sort of custom prototyping work, which are a lot of disintegrated small shops scattered around different industrial basins in America. And it connects those to buyers, i.e. companies that are trying to develop prototypes. And Xometry is becoming embedded in, say, apps like SolidWorks, for example, where you have an industrial designer, they come up with a design, right, or Autodesk or whatever you want, and they come up with a design, and then they want to get the prototype done. Well, the app will connect to some marketplace, and Xometry is one of these marketplaces that you can use, and you can have a local shop registered on the marketplace, accept the job, do the job, and ship the part for you. I think it's a brilliant idea. And these, of course, because they are a small company, they're focusing on very narrow sector. One of them, bulky bulky dropshipping of bulky items, and the other one, precise prototyping industries, right? So they're niche. And obviously, if you look at the number, GigaCloud looks really good here with a rule of 40 of 54. The growth predicted next 12 months is 40%. The gross margin is okay, but the EBITDA margin is quite high. So I like that one very much. Out of the two, what I'm gonna call my cheap network effects stocks that are early on in their journey towards creating their own network. Now, let me move on to two companies that I kind of put together. I'm going to look at them together. So Airbnb is, I've had a long story about Airbnb. It was one of my top 10 stocks. I ended up selling it because it was going nowhere and it was just too steady Eddie of a company, too slow. So I ended up selling it. I don't regret it because it dropped after I ended up selling it. But nonetheless, in my view, a stock like Airbnb is a perfect stock to park cash, to park money, because I don't see how the network of Airbnb could be disrupted, right? Short-term rentals are here to stay, and there's only one network for them. It's Airbnb. And of course, the cities are all going to ban Airbnb, obviously, just like the cities are all going to ban Uber and Lyft. And we're familiar to this fear, but that's not the case, right? Airbnb, when New York City started cracking down on Airbnb, New York City, Manhattan lost a lot of business. But New Jersey and all of the surrounding city, the business went up equally. Like the towns nearby increased the business equal to the amount of business lost within the city. You're just moving the problem. So of course there's knee-jerk reactions against the network and against the innovation, and that's true for every single innovation. But in my view, Airbnb is an inspirational company. It just grows way too slow for me right now, and I'm not interested at 13% growth, despite the fact that it's got great EBITDA margin, great gross margin, a decent multiple. When I see how much am I paying for that growth, and it's only 13% each percentage point of growth here, I'm paying a 0.57. That's too expensive for me, and it doesn't break the rule of 40. It's just under. Why is it under? Probably because it doesn't grow. Not probably, for sure, because it doesn't grow as fast. But the other company that I have in there is Spotify, right? So Spotify is a purely digital moat. I think it's interesting how Spotify ends up with such bad EBITDA margin, considering the fact that they are selling fully a digital product. I can tell you probably why that happens. The reason why that happens is because they have to pay back so many fees to the artists, right? So much money they have to give to the labels for that music. And Spotify is a stock that a lot of people really like. For example, Kathy would really like Spotify. So you see, I would not buy Spotify. I would not be investing in Spotify because I would be concerned, even though it's true that's the cheapest way for you to get music. You also have, copycats. You have Amazon Music, you have YouTube Music. But Spotify, as far as variety of music, if you want to have the most music you can possibly find, Spotify is the place. They were able to disrupt the CDs, the record shop, the record store. You may remember there was a store that used to be successful called Virgin Records, right, by Richard Branson. That was all disrupted. What Spotify did really in their disruption is they change the marketplace by orders of magnitude, many orders of magnitude. Roughly, to give you an idea, back in the days of Apple Music, it used to cost 99 cents for a song, 99 cents. Today, just for the sake of argument, Spotify has 60 to 70 million songs. So if you were to extrapolate that, it's closely equivalent to paying $1 to have listening access to 10 million songs, $1 to 10 million songs versus $1 for one song. So calculate how many orders of magnitude that is. That's quite a lot of orders of magnitude. And so, of course, that business became a near monopoly. It's the YouTube of audio. It's a monopoly. But I see a threat for Spotify, which is AI. What if we all start listening to AI-generated music? And it's just the AI generating music. If you follow that field, you know that say, weddings in tech in Silicon Valley now, they're having AIs write custom music. And you can just have a custom music written for your friends and buddies. So music is going to change a lot. I have a feeling this could be disrupted by AI. So I would stay out of that. Airbnb, I think the disruption risk is very low. People are always going to need accommodation. I'm out of the stock nonetheless. But we can see how as long as short-term rental are going to be there, Airbnb is likely going to keep leading. And as long as, let's call it, olden days music, and I'm talking about music of last year, right? As long as that music is still popular, Spotify is still going to keep going. But I am concerned about the impact of AI on Spotify because it's in the digital world. I'm not as concerned on the impact of AI for, say, an Airbnb because it is in the physical world. Now, let me move on to the classical businesses that use network effects, and those businesses is e-commerce. E-commerce is a classical network effect type business. The reason why Amazon was able to successfully create such a brand that 15 years ago, people used to say, let's buy it online. You go and buy it online. Why don't you buy it online? People today say, buy it on Amazon. You buy it. Why don't you just get it on Amazon? It's almost become a verb at least in the USA and in much of Europe. In much of Europe, it is like that. So why is Amazon so successful? Because it's a marketplace, because it's got all of the products one could ever dream of. Everything's on Amazon. And since everything on Amazon, it's logical that people just naturally go shop on Amazon. And if Amazon was missing any important product categories, then the experience would be scattered, and it would be much tougher for them to justify that moat. People shop on Amazon because Amazon has everything, right? It's much tougher in a physical store to do that. Physical stores don't benefit nearly as much from the network effects compared to, say, the Amazons. So that's a big deal. And when I look at a company like Amazon, which is protected in my view by moats, I like this company very much. But again, I'm a growth snob. I love growth, and it doesn't fit that criteria. It's almost a $2 trillion company, predicted to grow revenue at 12%. That is not enough. The gross margin is decent for retail. EBITDA margin is decent too, but nonetheless, I'm just not there. How much am I paying for that growth? Too much. I'm paying too much for that growth. Now, a stock that used to be much cheaper is Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre is slowly becoming a little more expensive, at least from what I was used to buying it. 2 years ago when it went below 1,000, I was loading up on that stock. Many people were. This has been a very great performing stock, and it's still growing at 33%. So I'm very happy with that growth. But in absolute, enterprise value over gross profit, over EBITDA, that's the most expensive stock. But that additional cost of that stock is justified by the fact that it grows at 33%. So when I look at my spreadsheet, enterprise value over gross profit over revenue growth, right? I'm paying 0.33 for each percentage point of future growth. So MELI I still find compelling, even though I'm not adding to it, because there's many more opportunities, right? If you compare, say, this network stock to, say, a small cap, right? The small cap has a much more appealing, in fact, almost 4 times, a good 3.3 times, let's call it, more appealing than a Mercado Libre. But of course, you take a different risk, right? This is a niche business for a niche product category. Mercado Libre is a mass market business, the leader of e-commerce in Latin America. You got some safety in Mercado Libre that you don't necessarily have in a GigaCloud, and so you got to pay up for safety. There's no problem with taking risks as long as you're being compensated for that risk, and that is clearly the case for a company like GigaCloud. In my view, no investment advice. Now, a company that I used to own too, but I sold it, it's Etsy. Etsy had a very interesting business model, very interesting positioning in the marketplace compared to eBay, compared to Amazon. Now, unfortunately, Etsy seems to have been close. It's not nearly as popular as it used to be. It seems to have been much closer to a fad than anything. The company is now growing at 5%. What is this? They were supposed to revolutionize art and craft. Maybe it's because people don't have as much disposable income as they used to. Also, Etsy had a lot of problems with people selling made in China products that had nothing to do with art and craft on Etsy, kind of killing the brand, killing the platform, and people just revert back to Amazon because you can buy artsy things on Amazon. Nonetheless, Etsy, you see here, it's the most expensive on my metric out of the three. Even though if you look at, say, EV over EBITDA is the cheapest, EV over forward gross profit is the cheapest, EV over revenues is the cheapest, because it's growing so slowly at 5%, right? 3 times as fast as the dilution of the US dollar. So it's not growing nearly as much. It's drowning in a flood of new US dollars. It's not taking in its mandatory 15% that it should take in every year. Well, it's expensive. It's a 0.75 and it doesn't breach the rule of 40. So I would not touch Etsy, right? This is getting a tough spreadsheet. I'll get to the one stock I own. If you know the channel, you know the one stock I own is coming in the form of CrowdStrike. It's coming in a sec. Moving on to more stocks that I don't own. These stocks are Bumble and Match, and someone needs to explain to me why the growth of these stocks is only 6%. Yeah, it's very low growth at 6%. You know, these stocks had a booming period during the 2020, 21, 22, when people were kind of staying at home. It seems like everybody met their significant other and they're not looking anymore. It's kind of what it seems when you're looking at the plus 6%. So perhaps a little bit of cyclical growth. Nonetheless, if you look at these two companies, they have the staying power of the marketplace, right? They are the leaders in their respective fields. This is a business that has a lot of staying power in my view, but it's just unattractive. It's an unappealing valuation for both of them. Even Bumble, which has a 0.4, which you could say in some cases is pretty good, but not really. It's only growing at 6%. The EBITDA margin is 16%. That's not very good for a purely digital product. How much money do they spend on advertising? I don't know, but probably quite a bit of money spent on advertising for this type of stock. Right? They're not in harvest mode. They're not harvesting the money like a Match is. And also, there is a little bit of, I guess, an ethical dilemma in those type of site, in that you kind of have an incentive. If you want to grow the business ever more, you kind of have an incentive for your app to not work, right? A dating app that's going to make a lot of money is a dating app that's not doing a very good job. And then you keep having to go back and having to go back and having to go back to it. So they're very strong networks, but they're networks that are heavily influenced also by demographics. And so with declining demographics, you know, these apps, they're kind of struggling. Even though, in theory, as I showed you, this is a big network effect stock. What is the value of a dating site if nobody's on it? The value is not there at all. The value lies in the users. The users are the reason for people to pay the product. It's just that the growth is not that good, and the problem of a dating site, and this is a problem that you don't have, say, with a CrowdStrike or a Meta, the problem with a dating site is that people are going to delete the app soon. Right? They're not going to keep the app forever. That's the very point. And so since they are not going to keep the app forever, since they're going to delete the app, you don't have that long-term recurring revenue than, say, you would have in a CrowdStrike. I love CrowdStrike because, you know, unlike dating apps that you can delete once you found someone you like, you delete the app. CrowdStrike, you don't delete cybersecurity. You keep your cybersecurity for your business for the long run. And that's a powerful business because then you're creating a recurring cash flow, money that keeps coming in. And CrowdStrike is a network FX stock because it's a cloud-based cybersecurity software. And the value of CrowdStrike lies in the fact that the Falcon software is running on every single endpoint. Of course, not every single endpoint, but you get the point. It's the most installed cloud cybersecurity software out of all of them. Which means, and how does that work? Imagine an endpoint somewhere, I don't know, a laptop somewhere gets attacked. what happens? Well, that laptop that gets attacked, CrowdStrike gathers the data. It's in the cloud. It gathers the data of that attack, and it updates the software for the billion-plus devices that have CrowdStrike installed. So by the very definition, if you had a competitor of CrowdStrike, but they only had, say, 100 million endpoint devices, say a company that has 100 million laptops, well, you have only the opportunity of cyber attacks on those 100 million laptops to make your updates. In the case of CrowdStrike, it's a billion laptops. So you're creating this network of cybersecurity that is almost insurmountable. And so it's a winner-take-most market. And I know people say there's going to be a lawsuit, Delta sued them because of an outage. They made a mistake, etc., etc. Sure, there's going to be a lawsuit, but you know what? A, it's going to take 5 years to figure out how much money in damages they got to give to the customer. B, they will likely appeal, right? And C, what is the damages going to be? Is it going to be $500 million? Is it going to be $700 million? Something like that. It doesn't justify at all how much the stock has dropped. The stock has dropped so much more than it should have. It lost, 20 billion in market cap after the outage of CrowdStrike. So I'm not worried at all about CrowdStrike. I think that drop was a buying opportunity. I did not buy that drop because my cost basis was still about twice as low as when it dropped back in July, if you remember. So CrowdStrike, love the company very much. And a final company that I used to own and that I sold to, these were in the 2021 days when everybody was making fun of Meta for the metaverse. I wasn't. I think the metaverse is a solid idea for the future. I think Apple validated Meta's view of the future by developing the Apple Vision. But nonetheless, we had opportunities to buy that stock. What an impressive company that Facebook/Instagram/WhatsApp is in the form of Meta platforms. It's an impressive company. The EBITDA margin is at 50%. This is similar to a Visa or a MasterCard. That's how much EBITDA margin they have. They're still growing at 16%. That's outstanding. These companies, the Metas, the Google, they're going to make money because of all of the presidential campaigns going on in the world in 2024, and especially the US presidential election. These ads have begun. These ads cost a lot of money, and they're going to be run on those platforms. So I expect some short-term movement up on these companies. Unfortunately, Meta is a very high-quality company. It's proven over and over again that it's got good leadership and it's able to outcompete and consistently outcompete in the field of social media. And it's an expensive stock because of that. And so how much am I paying for that growth? I'm paying a 0.65. It's fairly expensive. It's probably fair because of the high quality of the company. Nonetheless, on the rule of 40, they shine at a 66. That's the highest rule of 40 I got out of all of the network stocks. So this is a type of company, Meta, that we all have exposure to. If we own index funds, S&P 500, triple Q index funds, we all have exposure to that company. And it's kind of one of these sleeper, steady Eddie companies. And I have no concern for that company. I just don't own it directly. The one I own and is a top 10 position for me is CrowdStrike and also Mercado Libre, which is also a top 10 position for me. So let me finish by saying that this was not investment advice, no financial advice, just entertainment. I hope you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.